Welcome to Getting Ghosted. This is an Intuitive Soul Collective podcast, and I'm your host, Allie Horner. Welcome back, everybody. I am a little, I don't know. I feel like I'm nervous to share this. Not like nervous, but little nervous to share this, but I'm also kind of excited to share this story because I've had a couple people ask about this in the past, and it's back on the topic of having near-death experiences, of which I've had more than one. And I have no idea if that's where my gifts came from. I really don't. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't remember my gifts coming online from mine, whereas a lot of people, when they have a near-death experience, they suddenly come back and they just know things and they are talking to dead people and seeing things and hearing things. You know what I mean? Like they're more of their senses are online than other people. Mine were really, really different. I didn't even really process, especially the one that I had, and I'm going to talk about today. I didn't really process that I had it. So I just want to give a quick warning to anyone who gets kind of triggered by things like this. That we will be discussing NDEs in this, and we will be discussing just kind of that experience of death again. And please remember that nothing in this podcast is a replacement for professional mental health or medical advice or professional advice I'm a professional of nothing. So please do not take anything we say here lightly. Protect your mental health. If you know that this is going to be too much for you or too triggering, then hey, don't listen, boo-boo. Don't listen. That's totally okay with me. And let's get started. So many of you have heard in my spiritual awakening episode, which is way toward the beginning, that I went through my awakening, and a lot of what happened for me was it was very sudden and it was very weird. Okay. So we're going to go way back before I knew that I was a medium, though when I look back now, I'm like, oh yeah, I was definitely having intuitive medium experiences my whole life, but I just didn't understand that that's what they were. And so a lot of my life growing up, I was very sensitive. And I would say crawl out of your skin sensitive, like completely overwhelmed all the time, knowing things, hearing things. I would hear other people's thoughts in my head, and I didn't understand that that's what was happening until later. I would feel their feelings in my body. I would be completely aware that other people were struggling, having a hard time, going through all of these experiences, and that they were trying to almost like hide them or keep them repressed. And this is not anyone else's fault. I'm not trying to talk shit about other people, because our culture is not nice to people about their feelings. So, but I could feel when other people had shame in their bodies, when they were scared, when they were saying that they felt one way or acting one way, but feeling another. And it was a lot. It was very overwhelming. And then I had, of course, and this is always how people are, but we feel what other people are feeling, and then we have our own emotional reaction and our own judgment over that. So then I would have that as well. And I spent a lot of time crawling out of my own skin, just riddled with social anxiety and riddled with all of these clairsentient experiences of which I didn't really fully understand. So I wasn't just feeling other people's feelings and hearing other people's thoughts and having these things float through my head out of nowhere that didn't seem to make any sense. I was also having a lot of feeling shifting energies in different places and around different people, but also I was feeling a lot of spiritual energy, and I didn't understand that at the time. And now looking back, I very clearly understand what was going on, but at the time I really didn't. And so it was too much. I felt like I was like, I just saw this cartoon character flash in my mind where it's like their hair is standing on end, almost like they've been struck by lightning or like they're going through electrical shock. That's what I felt like all the time. And I got very depressed and very sick and very sad. And I really did try to do everything right. I tried to make things better. I tried to, I tried to numb it out. I tried to push the feelings aside, and I tried to, exercise my way out of it. I eventually got to a point where I gave myself a full-blown like exercise disorder because I was walking and running so much, because I was so uncomfortable with what I was feeling in my own body. I don't recommend doing that. And I also had issues with, just like the normal, millennial growing up looking at Cosmo and women's health and like body dysmorphia stuff, and we're past a lot of it now, like, bless it, but it was pretty tough at the time. And so when I was younger, I didn't understand all these things, like I said. So when I graduated college, I moved back to Chicago because my family was from there. And I thought, like, this is what I'm supposed to do. It's just logical that I would be back home. And I did get offered an internship at a big 3 PR firm. And I knew a handful of people that had moved to Chicago from my college and some friends from high school that were going to be around. And so I thought, okay, this is just the right next step, right? But everything felt wrong about it. And I knew it from the start because I had felt that way a lot in my life. So I was kind of just used to feeling that way. And I thought to myself, everyone feels this way. This is just what life is. This is how we do things. I mean, I honestly was just like, this is just what it is. And I'm not going to lie, like not long after I got this internship and then got another job in Chicago, it seemed like everything went wrong. I graduated during the '08 recession, like during '08. So not long after I graduated, the recession hit, which was really jarring because it really messed up a lot of job prospects for a lot of us and threw us into a lot of uncertainty right after graduation, right? I was trying to do everything the right way. I was trying to get the right jobs. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I just knew that what I was doing wasn't it. I was trying to date the right people and just finding that wasn't working either. I was trying to live in the city and, just do everything quote unquote right. And I'm going to be totally honest. It would be almost triggering for me to talk about it because so many things went wrong so fast. I have never had something, I've never gone through something similar ever again. It was like I got laid off from my job. I was in this beautiful brownstone with my friends. And in the last couple of months I lived there, a car in the middle of the night hit the brownstone next to us, like crashed straight into it. So we were woken up out of sleep to a car in the brownstone, like in the front porch of the brownstone next to us. I would go out drinking with my friends because I had such bad social anxiety. I couldn't deal with socializing without alcohol for a while when I was younger. And so I would go out drinking with my friends and finally like cut loose. And then we would get in a cab to go home trying to be responsible. And then the cab we happened to get in, the cab driver was drunk and he got in an accident. And I ended up with a black eye from smacking my face on that divider, like between the back seat and the front seat. Like, I mean, just like all these things went wrong. My boyfriend broke up with me, the layoff, like everything seemed to happen all at once. And it was like all of these big things, all of these little things. And so after I officially had gotten laid off from my job, I remember this day really specifically because it was finally getting really nice out in the city, right? And if you've ever been in Chicago during the summer, there is nothing like that spring to summer transition where it's like that May, June timeframe is fantastic. Baseball season has started. I lived in Wrigleyville. Like it was just a great time, but I was at absolute rock bottom. I was sick and sad all the time. Everything had gone wrong. And I remember taking this book and going and sitting in this little park not far from where I lived on Ashland and Addison, for all of y'all who are familiar with that area. And I just was sitting there and I read this book in this park all day. And I thought to myself, I feel so much better doing this than I have felt in years. And I just knew like my life has to change. I have not been doing anything right, but I had no idea what to do. And for whatever reason, that created some sort of huge release for me. So when I got back to my little brownstone, it was one of my last nights in there. I was packing up everything and I was overwhelmed and I just started, I was having panic attacks pretty regularly at that point. And I didn't know that that's what was happening to me, but I was having them like all the time. And I mean like blinding white light, ears ringing, can't think straight, can't see straight, can't hear anyone talking, like really bad panic attacks where you have to walk out of the room and you just literally can't breathe. And I had another really, really bad one. And I just found myself sobbing, lying on my bedroom floor in this brownstone with boxes around me and stuff getting packed up. And all of a sudden, everything went completely quiet and completely still. And I felt this presence with me. And I don't know how to describe it other than it was completely unconditionally loving and peaceful, and it felt almost masculine, but like not quite. I couldn't see anyone there, but everything in my field of vision just went blank. It was like I was suddenly like in this white light space, and I reached out my hand because I could feel this being or this presence reaching out its hand to me, but I couldn't see the hands. I just knew that I was reaching out to my hand, and I felt this presence gently hold my hand, and then it pulled me into almost, I don't even know how to describe it besides this sparkly white space, almost on another dimension where I knew that I was me, but I looked down and I couldn't see my body. There was no body there. And it had felt like it had gone from holding my hand to pull me up into this space to suddenly turning into this giant hand that just gently scooped my entire body, almost like when you pick up a baby bird that fell out of the nest. I felt like that, where I was very tenderly like scooped into this place, like carried there. And so once I got into this white space, I felt this being kind of like back, just gently putting, a loving, warm presence. And it was right at my back left side. And I saw all around me my entire life. And it's not quite like a linear time map where it would be like from left to right, start to end. But it was kind of like that, and it was more spherical. It's really difficult to describe the way time and all of the events in my life were shown to me. Some were farther back, and some were much more pronounced and clearer and crisper and popping up into the front of my field of vision. And it was like I went through everything really, really, really fast all at once, and I could see how everything I had been doing in my life, how turning off my access to my emotions, how not accepting that I could hear and see these beings on the other side and these loved ones on the other side, everything had led to me effectively shutting down my body, to the point where I was having these panic attacks. And I had not been listening to my feelings, to what I needed, to what I wanted, to what felt right for me or didn't feel right for me for years. It was like, but in this life review type of environment, I could see when I had stopped listening. I could see when I had started to learn not to listen. I could see all of these little tiny micro events where I had made the conscious choice not to listen to myself because of peer pressure or familial pressure, or situations where I thought the other person wanted me to do something, but they really wouldn't have been that upset had I said no to them. It's because in our minds, it always feels so much bigger than it is. I saw all these times where I had been so afraid of disappointing people that I had gone along with what they wanted in order to not disappoint them. And I saw how my own resent and sadness and anger that I had to push down in order to say yes when I wanted to say no was actually like sending out these energetic daggers at people, even unbeknownst to them, though I'm sure there's people that are as sensitive as I am and who could feel it. And it was almost like I had made tiny paper cuts in their fields. And I could see how other people had done the same to me. And that's when I was like picking up so much from all these people. And I started to understand like very clearly, and this was all with total compassion and love for myself. It was like my soul self was looking at this little childlike self of me going like with total tenderness and care. And I was showing myself all of these little moments. And at this point in time, I was looking at my family's timelines, and I could see how they were interwoven for me. And I could feel all of what they felt in terms of how I had impacted them and other friends and other people I'd loved. And it was like, I saw all this. For me, it felt like I was in it for hours, but I'm sure it must have been like all within the blink of an eye. And I knew how I had impacted people. Like I just intuitively felt it and knew it. There's no other way to describe it in words. And I saw that if I stayed in Chicago and if I didn't change, I would not make it to my 25th birthday. Like I knew. and I saw my timeline end. And it was like I would try to look forward and there was nothing. I could see other people's lives continuing and how it would impact them if I didn't go back. And so I had this being who stepped forward right at that point in time. And I was also very aware I was surrounded by all of these beings, but I couldn't see them. But it was like I could see the like almost little outlines of faces, but they were very loving and very kind. And I felt like I was being unconditionally held and loved and supported as I went through this process. And this being, almost like I call him like a guardian angel, but you could call them whatever you want. He stepped forward and he said, I want to show you what will be possible if you choose to go back. And I saw my son, Finn, who I now have, but I wasn't going to end up having him for years. I saw his brown hair and how he'd be born with brown eyes. I knew his eyes would change to this hazily grayish, blue, green, brown color. I saw myself around mountains. It was all these flashes of images of me going to concerts and dancing with friends and going hiking and skiing and sitting in kayaks. And I saw myself sitting under a ton of stars in this mountainous type of place. And I intuitively knew that it was Colorado, though I had never been there before at this point in my life when I was, 24. And I knew and was told, you're going to have a couple of really, really tough years when you go back. But if you decide to go back, you're going to be completely healed. And if you don't change, your timeline's going to stop. Your journey's going to stop on earth, and this is all of this mental, emotional, physical illness is going to come right back. And keep in mind at that point, like I said, I was only 24 and I looked physically fit and healthy, but I could see that I was basically drinking and putting out energetic poison all the time because of how I felt about myself and how I was outrunning my feelings and numbing out my feelings all the time, like literally all the time. I would do anything not to feel so uncomfortable, running miles and miles a day, over exercising, under eating, drinking, like whatever I could do. Sometimes I would binge eat, like whatever I could do to get out of how I felt is what I did. And I could see how I had completely poisoned myself mentally and emotionally and energetically. And so even though I looked fit and I looked healthy and I looked like I was in shape, and people would be like, gosh, how many miles did you run today? And it was like, I knew I was killing myself, like on accident. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if it was accidental at that point. I don't know if I was thinking about it or if I was subconsciously doing it. But it became very obvious to me when I was sitting there in this experience. And this being also showed me some other things. And I got to see, and I didn't know that my spiritual awakening would be coming, that I would be a medium. So I want to say that first. But I did know that I was going to have an awakening of some sort, though at that point in time, I think I just wasn't shown or told. Maybe I've forgotten exactly how much of it was there. But I did know that I was going to have a marriage and get divorced. And I just knew it somehow. I knew that I was going to have my son and that he would really need me. And because he's a channeler as well, and he needed me to be his mom. And I had the feeling that he had chosen me. I don't know how to explain that. Like he had chosen me long before I even had met his dad, who's now been my ex-husband for, it's 2025. So 7 years now. And then I was shown this man, and I remember thinking, oh yeah, I remember him now, but I still haven't met him and I have no idea who he is. But I was shown this man and I knew all these things intuitively about him. And this guide told me it's really important that you two meet. And once you meet, it's up to you guys what you do with that. But you two are very important. And I remembered oh yeah, we agreed to this before we came to Earth. So here is the other interesting thing with this about this guy, okay? So this is not just a me thing, right? So this wasn't just like my NDE experience that I had and I saw these things. Like, for example, he's going to have brown hair that's going gray. He's about 10-ish years older than me, give or take. He'll be involved in some sort of like comedy or comedian. Like I kept seeing something to do with like, he might have even been a writer, but I had this really clear knowing of whatever things he'll be doing, I'll be more behind the scenes. I don't mind that as much. I'm not, I know I have a podcast and stuff, but that's not like the goal. It's kind of like a way to reach another goal. But he's more front and center. Like and again, I don't know what the nature of our connection is going to be, or if it's like hey, you're going to meet, bump into each other. That's it. I know that there's a lot of free will and things, but I was shown and told us meeting, and I could see even like my eyesight is like eye line is around his shoulder. I'm 5'3" for reference. I'm pretty short. So I was like, so he's got to be 6 feet. But it was very, very clear to me, like he's got kids, or kids around him a lot. And I saw 2 in particular, like really specifically 2, something to do with the Midwest. He's connected to the Midwest in a really big way, but I also saw California, and New York. And then I saw like sports, a guy who likes sports. Keep in mind, a lot of things that I was shown, and especially with like, I wasn't able to see his face at any point. I wasn't told his name, and I intuitively knew, oh yeah, I can't know too much about him, or I could really fuck things up. Like it could really mess with things if you know too much. I'm telling you guys. So, and I've seen this with readings, and as I do so many readings where future detail or future information comes through, or people want to know about their futures, right? But this guide just kind of gently walked me through all of this, and he said, he'll know you, and then you'll know him. He's going to know you first. And I saw us almost like bumping into each other, and I saw him saying, Allie, are you Allie? And he said, he'll know you. You don't need to go find him. And again, I don't know what the nature of that connection will be. We might be lifelong friends. I have a really strong feeling there's some sort of deeper purpose or maybe like impact we're supposed to have on each other. So it could be like a lifelong friendship, work related. It could be work that I wouldn't even think of, or he wouldn't think of right now. But I have been very aware of like all these different things about this guy, like, except just never seeing his full name, or even I just know his name starts with the letter J. So, which could be like fucking anyone, you know what I mean? Pardon my French, but I mean, for real, and his haircut looked honestly very common. So it wasn't something where I was like, oh yeah, I'll remember that forever. Like, no, it's pretty normal thing. But I do remember seeing, and knowing we're meant to have a pretty big impact on each other, even if it happens in a very short period of time. However, my gut said to me, I have the feeling we'll at least be very connected as friends or colleagues for a really long time, if not something else. I don't really know. And I'm not very attached to like outcome in terms of where all that goes. Like if you guys have listened to my podcast before, I don't really date. So I'm always like, hey, who knows, whatever. But I don't know what it's all supposed to be or what it's supposed to mean. But I do know that since this has happened, and I had kind of shut a lot of this experience out of my mind for a long time, and I've been doing a lot more channeling work, so it's come back recently, and I've started to have this memory coming back of this NDE. And after I had my awakening, which, as you guys know, was right after I got pregnant with and had my son. So this like whole NDE experience was when I was 24. My awakening was when I was like 28, 29. And after I had my awakening, I would go get readings done because I was really curious about how to do readings and how they worked. And I love to get readings from other people. And I just really pay attention to when I feel intuitively guided to do so, when it really feels right for me. And I can't tell you how many people have mentioned this guy. And keep in mind, none of these psychics or mediums know each other. I'm really good about, I don't tell people background information about me. Now you guys know information. So, but when I go to a psychic or medium, I always tell people, don't give them background information. You don't need to tell them shit. Don't tell them anything. I can tell you like no less than 7 or 8 different psychics and mediums have talked about this guy coming, and they're like, your guides are talking about this, and he looks kind of like this, but I can't see his face, and he's got a J name, and they all say the same thing. And they're like, oh yeah, and he travels for work. And then he'll be like at home for stretches of time. And then several of them have said, oh yeah, he went through a pretty bad divorce, or not just divorce, but like some sort of split and some sort of custody thing. And it was pretty devastating. And I remember thinking to myself, how the fuck do people know that? And then I was like, well, I mean, I'm a psychic too. So sometimes you just know things too. And you don't consider yourself a psychic or a medium, you just have a dream about it. You just kind of intuitively know it, and that's fine. But I remember always thinking, man, I didn't even bring this up. I haven't even asked if I'm going to meet someone. I haven't asked anything about my love life in years because I don't care, like, for the most part. And yet all of these people for years and years picked up on this same guy coming, and they all gave the exact same details, some of them with more detail, some of them with just the standard that I've given here, and I've left a lot out for a lot of obvious reasons. But all of these people like picked up on everything, and they're like, oh yeah, like he's got something with like Catholic school in the Midwest, and like may have even lived in Chicago at one point, and New York and LA, and travels, and I see him in Europe and yada yada. And he's like, one person brought up something to do with like playing drums, or like she was like, jokingly said he likes the color blue. So I don't know what that means. But there was all these references to this guy being around water. But then they would all say, and he's really funny, and people know him to be funny. And one person even said to me, I think you will hear him on a podcast before you realize that it's him, and he's going to know you first. He's going to know who you are, not the other way around. And I don't know what would cause that, but almost like a 6 degrees of separation, ships passing in the night type of thing. And, but they all said, when I was like, well, why does this person keep coming up in these readings? All of them would say, well, I have my guesses, but it really isn't just about the form of like what you guys decide to do when you meet is kind of up to you. If you're going to date, if you're going to be friends, if you're going to work together. But they all said you're meant to impact each other so strongly that if you don't meet each other, it's going to have consequences for both of you. And it's like you both could still fulfill your purposes, but it's going to be really, really a struggle without each other, without that friendship or connection or working together or whatever. And I just kind of said, okay. And again, keep in mind, I had not asked about this person. I had not told these psychics or mediums about this person. And they were all like, I don't know why. I know you're asking about other subjects, but like, this is all that I'm seeing. This is all that's coming forward in the reading. And I would get so exasperated with it at one point in my life, it's all that would come through in reading. So I would just go, okay, fine, tell me. And I would get like annoyed because it was all that was coming through. We're supposed to, from what I understand, like influence and impact each other's work. That's what I understand so far. But it's really, I think, up to our free will. And so I have no idea what the greater nature of our connection will be, or how many different iterations it might go through, or if it's like we'll bump into each other and never speak to each other again. I have no idea. And honestly, I don't really care that much. But I think about this life review or this experience I went through sometimes and go, I guess I'm almost 40. This is going to be happening soon. Like you just kind of feel it in your gut. But I knew all of these things about this person, like he's a comedian or has some sort of comedic background of some kind. Like I said, I don't really ask a lot about it because I'm just kind of like, hey, let's just let it unfold. The brown hair going gray. All of the images and flashes I saw of him, I saw him being around children. So I don't know if my gut says he probably has his own kids. But I always would see, like I could never see his face and I would never hear his name. I just knew that his name starts with the letter J, which is like, could be flipping anyone. And also his hairstyle, I was like, that is a really common hairstyle. Like I'm not going to know who the F this guy is for a long time. And I could make any number of guesses, and it's like, so I just have sat there like, really not asking much about it or trying to figure out who he is. And in fact, my guide said, hey, like you can't look him up. You can't look for him. So we can't show you too much about him because it's going to ruin everything. It's going to really jeopardize a lot of things for you and him. And you guys are meant to have an impact on each other. And I understand it had something to do with our spiritual purpose or some sort of work that we were going to be doing in the world, whether together or separately. But we were going to have an important impact on each other. And I was just very aware of like the chain of events that would sprout, from us meeting each other. Again, whether we bump into each other and have one conversation and that's it, and we go on our separate ways, or we end up being lifelong friends. I really don't know. But I was shown very clearly, this person's important. And he's going to know you first, and he's going to tell you everything, and you have to believe him. But I just had this knowing of like, oh yeah, I remember this from before we came into these lives all of a sudden. And so I was pulled back out of everything, and I was shown and told, when you guys meet, you will both be in much, much, much better places energetically, mentally, emotionally, but you can't stay in Chicago if you go back in your body, or you're going to come right back out here and you won't have the option to go back. And I was shown even more about my life, just amazing experiences I would have, like moving and getting a dog and laughing my ass off with my friends late at night, sitting on a patio with a glass of wine and riding my bike and going for long runs in the rain. And I remember seeing images of my son rolling down a hill, and keep in mind, like I was 24, I wasn't thinking about having kids at all at that point in time, but I saw images of him rolling down a hill in the grass, and I could feel myself saying yes to everything. Like I knew I'm going to have a larger spiritual purpose, and there's people that I'm going to come to earth to work with. It's not just about this guy. There's groups of women, there's groups of people. There are things I'm going to do, books I might write. And I remember part of my vision being like, there's so many books I'm going to get to read. I was like so excited about all these fun books that I was going to get to read. Like that was just such a big piece of it for me. And I knew my life is going to change if I go back and if I say yes. But it was like I was feeling my yes coming out of the center of my chest. And the second I started feeling that yes, I woke up. And as my eyes opened, I was aware of my heart had stopped, and I had stopped breathing. And I didn't know how long this had happened for. It could have been, 5 seconds. It could have been, I don't know, but it felt like I had been with this being and in this other world for days, just going through my whole life review and my potential future and all these wonderful things that might potentially get to happen if I chose to come back. So I did come back, and I just remember being completely at peace. And I fell asleep on my floor. And at some point I ended up back in my bed and woke up, and I felt very different. I knew I was going to have a tough couple of years coming, but this guide was right. Everything that had been going on with my body was cured. I didn't think about or look at my body or my feelings or my emotions the same way at all anymore. And I ended up moving out of Chicago land area and to Colorado less than 2 weeks after that. And when I moved to Colorado, I knew, even though it was scary to a degree, it was kind of like the butterflies on your stomach, exhilarating type of scary, which for me is the right kind of scary. I don't really know a lot of people, but I knew right away I was in the right place because my nervous system completely settled. And I got a dog, and several years after I moved there, I ended up having my son, and he came out looking exactly how I had seen him and how I had felt him. And if you're wondering about how closely intertwined he and I are, he's very much his own person. And I always think about him as being like, he doesn't belong to me. He's here as my guide and my teacher as much as I am his, and he's going to have a lot of his own independent and very specific experiences outside of my experiences with him. But he and we're both Libra risings, which means that all of our planets are in the same houses, which I just find is bizarre. Like that, I find that that's very unusual to see in families from what I understand. And so, that's how intertwined he and I are to such a degree that when he came to earth, and he channels too. So, and he just really started channeling in the last like year, like really stream of consciousness stuff coming through. And he even told me, he was like, well, Mom, I had to be your son. Like, he knew he was supposed to be my child. Like, he knew if, I'm not born to my mom, there's going to be, problems, and I'm going to go through a lot of tough stuff because I need her to be my mom so that she can help teach me and train me with everything that I'm going to be going through. And he said, Mom, if I had been born to anyone else, I wouldn't have been able to do, like, he said, I wouldn't have been able to talk to Michael, because he talks to Archangel Michael a lot, or he calls him just Michael. And so all of these things, though, that I was shown, all of these amazing, nights jamming out to concerts in the mountains and going kayaking and traveling to Italy, all of these things that I had been shown, all of them happened. Literally all of them. The only thing that hasn't is that I haven't met like whoever this guy is will impact each other's purpose or paths, which is fine, because I knew it wouldn't happen until after I turned 40 anyways. And who even knows, how quickly after I turned 40, it could be another 10 years. But I remember thinking, man, all these other things happen, so this is going to happen too. And I just think it's one of the harder stories for me to share, because I don't really understand what made my heart stop that day, but like, on like a physical level, but I do know spiritually that it was that I had been repressing my emotions and my feelings and trying so hard to live the quote unquote right way, that I had forgotten that the only right way for me to live was in a way that was going to be true and authentic to myself, even if it meant upsetting some other people's apple carts and dealing with them being angry for a little bit, or disappointed, or even hostile at points. Like, the most important thing was that I was going to be really true to myself, as cheesy as that sounds, but on an energetic level, it's like putting poison in your gas tank, or sludge in your gas tank when you say yes, but you mean no, or when you try to pretend that you feel something different than what you feel. And I really think this is one of our biggest epidemics in our culture, is the fact that we train people and condition people to do those things rather than listening to their inner knowing, or their gut instinct, their intuition, or what their feelings are saying to them, and that's where we see people, once they finally feel their feelings, they overreact or they overcorrect, and they, they get really, really enraged and angry, and they can't control themselves, and they do something really bad, or harmful to someone else, because they don't know how to deal with anger in a healthy way. They don't they don't realize that having anger sometimes is just a signal of like, hey, this boundary's been crossed, or I need to change something, or, I've been going a little off track for what's actually right for me. This is just a sign to course correct, so they don't know how to deal with big feelings, and they don't know how to deal with intensity, because it just builds and builds in the body. So I wanted to share this story, even though it's very vulnerable for me, and I'm sorry if it was a little choppy in there, but I wanted to share it because I just want people to know that, like, when we talk about, on this podcast, listening to your guidance, listening to your intuition, the more that you're feeling your feelings, the stronger your inner guidance system is going to be. And the more you're going to feel like you're in the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right things. And you'll know when it's time to make changes, when it's like, hey, this might have been the right path for a certain amount of time. And now my inner knowing, it's not just emotions, it's like inner sensations. It's clairsentience. It's the feeling of like feeling the flow of life and knowing exactly where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do, what you need to say and to whom. That is going to be crisper and clearer the more comfortable you are with being in your own body, and the more comfortable you are with the process of listening to who you are and what you need and what you want, even to the point of being willing to make some mistakes and F it up a little bit from time to time while you're learning how to listen again. Because I really feel like the universe has this like larger hum to it. There's a larger symphony going on, and we need you playing the note that you're meant to play. You're not here to play anyone else's notes. So you can't try to be like anyone else, and you can't ignore how you feel trying to do things, quote unquote, the right way. If that way isn't for you, just to please others. You're not supposed to be, maybe you're over here supposed to, jam out on the drums. Maybe you're supposed to be a comedian. You're not supposed to be a lawyer. You're not supposed to play the guitar, So we need you listening to you and doing what you need to do here on earth, even if it defies convention or pisses other people off a little bit, or makes it so that you have to be the change maker or the cycle breaker in your family. So I hope that this was helpful for someone. I know this is a longer one and probably a little bit weird, but I don't know. I just feel like someone needed to hear it today, and I hope that it's helpful for someone. And I don't really talk about this experience as much. I think a part of me shut it out of my mind for a long time and forgot that I had it. And the more that I've been doing some of these channelings that I've been doing, as you guys know, I've been doing more and more like deep channeled messages for people. And the more I've been doing that and doing some bigger energy work, the more that the story and the more details that have come back to me about that time in my life when I was 24. Like I said, I'm 39 now. So I'm like, I can't believe it. But if, that's a long time ago, and so I don't know. I just hope that this helps someone today. And thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble a little bit. But I really hope that this helps someone. Feel free to reach out if you want to share your own stories, or if you have your own questions that you want to have answered in a later podcast episode. I can't wait to hear them. You can submit them in the Patreon groups. We have a free group. We have paid groups. Those will be linked in the show notes. And then you could also submit them on my website. It's intuitivesoulcollective.com. There's a page for the podcast. I'll link it in the show notes as well. And there's a whole contact form and email section that you can fill out if you would rather submit anonymously there. Feel free to do so. But thank you guys again so much for listening to this and for listening to our podcast.